Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to take a look at the latest thoughts about how the by-election in Boris Johnson's vacated seat of Uxbridge and South Riuslip will go. On paper it should be a Labour win, but statisticians are sounding notes of caution. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So Ben Walker, a pollster who's helpfully very free with his analyses, even of his own work, has written a piece about the signs both for and against a Labour victory in Uxbridge and South Riuslip, and it's been echoed by others as well. I do think he's missed a couple of points out, which I'll cover, but let's go over what he sees as the major issues. So the first thing to note really is there's a bit of a mismatch between the MRP polling, which says, oh yeah, Labour should take this, and the local election results, which go, actually, this is staying Conservative. You know, MRP polling has proven itself in both the 2017 and 2019 general elections and has been really good in a number of by-elections as well. But it's a model like any model. It's got its drawbacks based on assumptions made. All models have assumptions. MRP is a way of using a sensible poll sample to predict seat-by-seat results for elections based on the types of voters present in each constituency rather than doing a poll in each constituency. And the further away the constituency is from the model, the less accurate it's likely to be. It works best as well where you've got larger parties concerned, which is the case here. It's between Labour and the Conservatives. It works less well where there are small parties or prominent independents concerned, which there is a little hint of that here. For example, one potential googly, which Walker doesn't seem to cover in his article, is the possible inclusion of a Jeremy Corbyn candidate standing against Labour in an attempt to stop them winning the seat. Just as George Galloway in Batley and Spen did a couple of years ago, that could throw a spanner in the works. On that occasion, it was ultimately unsuccessful, but only just. So a well-respected independent candidate could challenge Labour in Uxbridge and South Riuslip. Not for the seat. This is an attempt to let the Conservatives win, not beat Labour to the parliamentary seat. MRP polling, though, can't possibly judge the impact of a one-off like this or an unusual event, an anti-Labour candidate on the left standing. It might be that voters, even those not entirely happy with Labour, will appreciate the gravity of what's happening here and make sure they vote to beat the Tory candidate as an absolute priority. The Tories losing this seat causes them to, triggers their angst a little bit more. It is powerfully in the interests of all anti-Tories that the Tories lose this seat. You know, it might be that voters, however, see it as a purely standalone by-election. They don't really think of the strategic picture and they just think, well, you know, this is just a by-election. I'm going to use my vote as a protest vote. We don't know. But it will certainly take some votes away from Labour. Second problem for Labour is the local election results. Usually if a seat which has been held by a particular party for a while, if it's about to swing to the main rival, you tend to get a sense of it with a swing in the local elections. Now, this hasn't happened here. Solidly Conservative. Now, as Walker explains, local election results don't always translate into Westminster voting results. Just because it's sort of stayed Conservative doesn't mean people would do the same in a general election. You know, Walker explains that, say, a single local issue or popular local councillors can keep council seats Conservatives, even if the voters want Labour to represent them at Westminster when they start thinking about this national picture. And I can attest that in my local area, we had the local elections this year, there was no attempt by the local Labour group to challenge for my ward. There was no campaigning went on. Partly because it is a very Conservative area, but also because the local councillors are actually well respected in their own rights and seem to work for the community. However, as I said, as soon as the seat was vacated last week, I actually think the Conservatives are playing a good game plan in this seat. They have immediately decided to make their campaign about ULEZ, which is a scheme for charging people extra for cars not meeting emission criteria in London. In reality, it doesn't really affect most people's cars at all. You'd have to have a fairly old car. Mostly it's likely to hit diesel owners, but even then you'd have to have a car that's getting on a bit. But then diesel cars do get on a bit. But the Conservatives have been making a real issue of this around London, mostly ahead of the next mayoral contest, but they're going to make it an issue here as well. Now, ironically, the scheme itself was heavily supported by Boris Johnson, both as Mayor of London and as Prime Minister. But the Tories are keeping quiet about that. and formally taken a stance against the issue. You know, Walker explains that car ownership in Uxbridge and South Riuslip is very high, so it could certainly be a wedge issue. It is actually a smart move by the Tories to shift the by-election from being a confidence vote in the government, one that they would probably lose, to a local issue, which of course can't possibly be impacted by the result. You know, the resultant MP can't do anything about it, but nonetheless making it about that issue. It could also fire up Conservative support, absolutely, who might not vote for the shambles which is Rishi Sunak's clown show in Westminster, but will absolutely vote as a protest against Sadiq Khan's ULEZ scheme. I actually wonder if the Labour campaign will make use of the fact that Boris Johnson not only supported ULEZ, but basically insisted that Khan expand it, whether he wanted to or not. I think he wanted to anyway. Because that's another factor which can affect election results in a way MRP can't help you with. The quality of the candidates and the quality of the campaign. Now, in a sense, the quality of a campaign is indirectly factored into MRP. The fact that Labour have been more effective in campaigning than the Tories in the last year or so does feed through to voting intention poll and therefore impacts MRP forecasts. But previous by-elections have been mostly about national issues. It's a vote of confidence in the government. Note also that Labour ran the recent local elections on essentially national government issues as well. There was less emphasis on genuine local issues. So there will be a battle of the campaigns here. The Tories will try to persuade people to use their vote for this local issue. Labour will attempt to persuade them to use it to send the Tories in Westminster a message. Neither of them are saying, if you elect this particular candidate, they'll do this, because they can't. You know, so it's a case of who is going to win in terms of persuading them to use their vote for a particular issue. That being said, the local circumstances are not all against Labour. So far it has been. I would say the Conservatives have a couple as well. Boris Johnson is likely to have significant support. Now, nationally, Conservative voters are sort of split between supporting Johnson and agreeing that he should just bugger off now. In itself, that could mean Tory voters refusing to turn up if they see Johnson as being unfairly ejected from Parliament. But in his own seat, he's likely to have even higher support than nationally, and Johnson will no doubt subtly let it be known that he won't at all mind the Tories losing the seat. He might even use one of his Daily Mail articles near the election to suggest that Sunak only has himself to blame, hint, hint, if he loses the seat, hint, hint, if a load of Conservative voters decide not to turn up on polling day, hint, hint. Not directly calling for it, but subtly hinting that he would not condemn such behaviour, that he would, it'd be understandable, shall we say. So if we start from a base of the MRP polling suggesting a good chance of a Labour victory, then the local issues which can change that would be as follows. First, voters seeing it as a protest vote against ULEZ works against Labour. Second, a Corbyn or other anti-Labour candidate on the left works against Labour, of course. The local election results suggest a resistance in this constituency to behave like the rest of the country. That's not in Labour's favour. We don't know that it would necessarily follow that they'll vote in the same way for a by-election, but the fact that they're resisting the general trend is, again, not in Labour's favour. But fourth, support for Boris Johnson could mean a protest stay away on polling day amongst a significant number of Conservative voters, perhaps. You know, I would expect his friends in the media to support this idea. I would certainly expect his Conservative Democratic organisation pals to do so, especially if they have some reason not to like the Tory candidate. That obviously would work against the Conservatives. So there are quite a few unusual local circumstances, which means that this will not fit neatly the national trend template. Doesn't mean the MRP polling is useless, but it does likely mean that the model will fit reality less well than an average Labour Conservative battleground. That being said, Labour should still win. Ben Walker thinks so. The bookies are making Labour heavy favourites across the board. I would just finish off by noting that in the local election, very few prominent Tories turned out to campaign. I think James cleverly did it once and made a right arse of it. He couldn't be bothered. Boris Johnson did it once, filmed himself breaking the law, nothing happened. That was it. It's mostly, if the same thing happens in this by-election and all they've got to rely on is Greg Hands and Rishi Sunak, they were the only ones who went out and about, both of whom are really bad at it, by the way, then that will work against the Tories, because it's all right having a good game plan. I think they do, but you do need people to carry it out. Labour will absolutely flood the place with their star turns. If the Tories don't, well, that's going to work against them as well. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.